The year is 2025, and the world feels like it is trembling both, literally and figuratively. Nations are in turmoil. Economies are fragile. Wars continue to escalate. And earthquakes are shaking the foundations of the earth with increasing frequency. For many, these events seem random, simply part of the cycles of history. But for others, especially those who study prophecy, what we are witnessing is far more significant. It's not just about disasters or conflicts. It's about a pattern, a rhythm of chaos that lines up with what ancient texts have been warning us about for centuries. From the Bible to other prophetic traditions, the message is clear. The last days will be marked by great shaking. This shaking is not just physical, it is social, political, economic, and spiritual. Entire systems are collapsing, power is shifting, and humanity is being forced to reckon with its choices. And as the ground beneath us quakes, the question arises, are we living in the fulfillment of prophecy? Signs of the times. The earth trembles. Earthquakes have always been part of human history, but their increase in frequency and intensity has caught the attention of scientists, politicians, and religious leaders alike. In recent years, devastating quakes have struck in regions unprepared for such disasters. Cities have crumbled in seconds, leaving behind scenes of unimaginable destruction. But earthquakes in the prophetic sense are more than just natural disasters. They are symbolic of instability. The earth itself is shaking, but so are the structures of human power. Nations rise and fall, alliances crumble, and economies collapse. Just as tectonic plates grind against one another until the pressure finally breaks. The systems of this world are straining under immense weight. Prophecy, especially from the scriptures, often connects earthquakes with divine intervention. In the book of Matthew, Jesus describes how in the last days there will be earthquakes in various places. In Revelation, great earthquakes accompany the unfolding of God's judgment. And in the Old Testament, earthquakes mark the moments when God's presence touched the earth. So when the ground shakes, prophecy watchers don't just see geology at work. They see a sign, a signal, a warning. Wars and rumors of wars alongside earthquakes. Another hallmark of the last days is the increase in war. Our generation has not known true global peace. From the Middle East to Eastern Europe, from Africa to Asia, conflict continues to escalate. And in 2025, the danger has only grown sharper. New technologies are fueling the arms race. Nations are developing weapons with destructive capacities beyond anything we have seen before. Cyber warfare, autonomous drones, AI-guided missiles, and even whispers of next-generation nuclear weaponry. The world is bracing for conflicts that could reshape humanity forever. But it's not just the wars themselves, it's the rumors of wars, the uncertainty, the tension, the constant fear of what might erupt next. Jesus himself said in Matthew 24-6, "You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come." This statement is chilling for our time, because everywhere we look, we see nations positioning themselves, militaries mobilizing, leaders posturing, and the world anxiously holding its breath. The convergence of prophecy. What makes this moment unique is not just earthquakes or wars and isolationites, their convergence. Throughout history, there have always been wars. There have always been earthquakes. There have always been plagues and famines. But what we are seeing now is different. We are seeing all of these signs intensify at the same time. Earthquakes tearing down cities. Wars threatening global stability. Plagues and diseases re-emerging. Some natural, some engineered. Economic instability shaking the very systems we rely on. Moral decline spreading across societies. This convergence is what makes prophecy watchers say, this is the great shaking. Prophetic warnings across time. It's not just the Bible that speaks of this. Other cultures, from the Mayans to the Hopi, from Nostradamus to Islamic have echoed similar themes of shaking, upheaval, collapse, and renewal. While the details differ, the message is the same. Humanity will face a time of testing unlike any before. In the Bible, the prophet Haggai declared, Once more, I will shake the heavens and the earth, the sea and the dry land. I will shake all nations, and what is desired by all nations will come. Haggai 2:26-27. This shaking is not just destruction, it's preparation. A tearing down, so something greater can be built.
As we look across the globe, wars are no longer confined to distant battlefields. They are at the center of international attention, shaping the future of nations. Civil wars have torn apart entire superpowers engaged in proxy conflicts, fueling instability in already fragile countries. And the ripple effects reach everyone, from food shortages to refugee crises to rising energy prices that destabilize economies. But prophecy watchers ask, why now? Why this convergence of wars and tensions? The Bible gives us insight. In Matthew 24, Jesus warned his disciples, nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. This was not a simple statement about conflict. It was a declaration that war itself would become a defining feature of the last days. And today, this prophecy is unfolding before our eyes. The Middle East remains a powder keg, with nations fighting for dominance and Jerusalem once again in the crosshairs. Eastern Europe has become the stage for conflict between East and West, raising the threat of global escalation. In Asia, superpowers jockey for control over the seas and technology. Africa is experiencing internal wars and foreign interventions that devastate civilian populations. What's different now is the scale. The weapons of today make global destruction a possibility with the push of a button. Humanity has reached a point where prophecy no longer feels symbolic, it feels imminent. The rumors of wars. Fear as a weapon, equally important, is not just the wars themselves, but the rumors. Every headline, every leak, every diplomatic breakdown fuels uncertainty. Rumors create fear, and fear drives nations into dangerous decisions. In today's hyper-connected world, rumors spread instantly. Social media, 24-hour news cycles, and viral videos can ignite conflict before leaders even have time to respond. A single false report, a staged video, or a manipulated piece of intelligence can push nations toward war. Jesus' prophecy is profound in this sense. He didn't just warn of wars. He warned of rumors of wars. He understood that fear, panic, and speculation would themselves become tools of destabilization. Think about it. A rumor can collapse stock markets. A rumor can trigger a military buildup. A rumor can start riots in the streets. Rumors themselves are part of the great shaking geopolitical shifts. The old order collapsing for decades. The world order was relatively stable. After World War II, powerful alliances and economic structures kept a fragile peace. But in recent years, those systems have started to break apart. The United Nations is weakened, unable to prevent major conflicts. Alliances that once seemed unshakable are fracturing under political pressure. Global trade systems are crumbling as nations turn inward, prioritizing their own survival. Superpowers, once dominant, are now facing internal instability, while new powers rise from the shadows. Prophecy tells us this. Collapse of the old order was inevitable. Daniel's visions spoke of kingdoms rising and falling, one after another, until the final kingdom would be established by God himself. Revelation describes beasts that represent world empires, each devouring and replacing the other until the climax of history. We are living in a moment where the ground is shifting under the feet of nations. The world we once knew is disappearing, and a new, uncertain order is taking its place.
The role of Israel in prophecy. No discussion of wars and prophecy can ignore Israel. Throughout Scripture, Israel is described as the prophetic timepiece of God's plan. What happens in Israel often signals what is about to happen to the world. And in our day, Israel finds itself at the center of global attention. Surrounded by hostile neighbors, caught in geopolitical battles, and connected to the world's major religions, Israel's survival is nothing short of miraculous. Yet, prophecy tells us that in the last days, all nations will gather against Jerusalem. Zechariah 2:8, bonding tega. We see the beginnings of this alignment. Political hostility against Israel is rising, international pressure is mounting, and conflicts in the region are intensifying. For prophecy watchers, this is no coincidence. It is the unfolding of God's word, the clash of civilizations. It's not just about politics and territory. The wars we see today are also spiritual. They represent a deeper clash, a clash of values, ideologies, and beliefs. The clash between freedom and control. The clash between secularism and faith. The clash between materialism and spiritual truth. Prophecy makes it clear. The last days will be marked not only by physical battles, but by spiritual battles. The Apostle Paul wrote, "We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." Ephesians 6:12. When we look at the conflicts raging today, we must see them for what? They are, yes, geopolitical struggles, but also the spiritual outworking of forces far greater than any one nation or leader. A world moving toward global conflict. History tells us that small wars often pave the way for larger ones. Local conflicts escalate, alliances pull in surrounding nations, and before long, the entire world is engulfed. Many prophecy scholars believe we are moving towards such a global conflicta war unlike any before it. The book of Revelation speaks of massive wars in the end times, with armies numbering in the hundreds of millions. The sixth trumpet judgment describes a conflict that will wipe out a third of mankind. Revelation 9:15. These are staggering numbers that modern warfare could easily make possible. The wars we see today may very well be the precursors to these global conflicts. Each battle is not just a fight over land or resource. This is another step toward the fulfillment of prophecy. The prophecy continues to unfold before our eyes. We've already seen how earthquakes and wars serve as warnings, shaking both the land beneath our feet and the nations that govern humanity. But in the last days, these tremors won't just remain isolated. They will intensify, ripple through every continent, and become impossible to ignore. The Bible calls these events birth pangs. Jesus himself compared the last days to labor pains, waves of pressure, contractions that increase in frequency and severity until something new is born. Let's examine how these signs are intensifying today. 1. Earthquakes beyond measure. It's no longer a matter of if an earthquake will hit it. A matter of when and where. Rising frequency. Global data shows that earthquakes of magnitude 6 and above have been increasing steadily. Places once thought safe are now trembling. Megaquake scientists warned that zones like the San Andreas Fault in California, the Cascadia Subduction Zone in the Pacific Northwest, and the Himalayan region are locked and loaded for devastating quakes. Volcanoes awakening. Alongside earthquakes, volcanic eruptions are also intensifying. Think of Iceland's constant eruptions, Tonga's undersea explosion that sent shockwaves around the world, or the quiet giants like Yellowstone that scientists say are overdue. Could these be reminders that the earth itself is groaning under the weight of prophecy? Romans 8:22 declares, "For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. The shaking of the earth is not random, it is prophetic." 2. Wars without end. If earthquakes shake the ground, wars shake societies. Never before have we seen such widespread conflict across the globe. Europe in turmoil. The war in Ukraine continues to escalate, with ripple effects that impact energy markets, food supply, and political alliances. The Middle East on fire. Prophecy watchers note the intensification of tensions between Israel, Iran, and surrounding nations. Many point to Ezekiel's prophecy of a coming war that draws nations against Israel. Asia's rising tensions. China and Taiwan stand on the edge of confrontation, a conflict that could draw in global superpowers. Africa and beyond. From Sudan to the Sahel, from coups to civil wars, bloodshed grips the land. When Jesus said in Matthew 24:6, "You will hear of wars and rumors of wars," he wasn't describing isolated skirmish. He was pointing to a world stage of constant unrest. We are living in that stage right now. 3. Fear that spreads faster than war. One of the most dangerous signs is not just the wars themselves, but the fear that follows. Fear spreads like wildfire. Fear collapses economies. Fear drives governments into desperation. Fear makes people surrender freedoms for the illusion of safety. Economic collapse! Wars disrupt trade routes, skyrocket inflation, and trigger recessions! Already, some nations are facing food shortages and financial meltdowns. Refugee waves. Millions are displaced by conflict, creating humanitarian crises and straining already fragile systems. Weapons of mass destruction. For the first time in decades, nuclear war is openly discussed as a real possibility. This is not just about political power struggles. It's about the world being shaken emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. Luke 21:26 says, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. Full. The signs in the heavens, the great shaking isn't only in the ground or among nations, it's also above us. Solar flares and storms. Scientists warn of massive solar storms capable of knocking out global power grids, asteroids, and cosmic threats. NASA frequently tracks near-Earth objects, with some passing dangerously close. Unexplained phenomena. From strange lights in the sky to unusual weather patterns, humanity is witnessing the unpredictable. Revelation 6 speaks of cosmic disturbances, stars falling, the moon turning red, and the heavens being shaken. Are we beginning to see the early shadows of this prophecy? 5. Globalization. The world prepares for control as earthquakes shake the ground and wars shake nations. Another prophecy is quietly unfolding. The uniting of the world under central systems of control. Digital currencies. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are being tested worldwide. These could one day control what we buy, sell, or trade. Surveillance systems, cameras, AI-driven monitoring, and biometric tracking are becoming common in everyday life. One world government hints. As crises mount, leaders call for global solutions to problems like war, famine, climate change, and pandemics. Revelation 13 warns of a system where no man can buy or sell without the mark. Could we be watching the foundation of this system being laid today? The shaking has a purpose here. S, the critical truth. The great shaking, ISNT, just destruction it. S, a wake-up call. Hebrews 12:26-27 says, yet once more I shake not only the earth, but also heaven, that those things which cannot be shaken may remain. This is why prophecy matters. It points us to stability in a world collapsing around us. When we look at the chaos of earthquakes, wars, and disasters, it would be easy to believe that the story ends with despair. But history and prophecy remind us that in times of great shaking, there also comes an awakening. Every time the earth trembles, and every time kingdoms fall, humanity is forced to ask deeper questions. Why are we here? What is the purpose of life? Where is hope to be found? This is where the narrative of the last days takes a sharp turn. Because while the great shaking represents destruction, it also opens a door for transformation. 1. The awakening of the human spirit throughout history. Great calamities have often led to revivals of faith, morality, and a search for meaning. After plagues, people turned to God. After wars, societies sought peace. And after disasters, communities found ways to unite. Prophecy suggests that the last days will not only be about the collapse of old systems, but also about the rise of a new hunger for truth. In these moments, people who never prayed before will pray. People who once mocked spirituality will start searching for answers. The shaking of the world outside forces the shaking of the soul inside. 2. Prophetic voices rise in the Bible. The Quran and many ancient texts speak of prophets who warned people before disasters struck. In the last days, many believe prophetic voices will rise again, not necessarily to predict the hour, but to call people back to humility, justice, and compassion. The Great Shaking is not only about earthquakes and wars, it is about shaking people awake. Imagine millions of people realizing that the systems they trusted, banks, governments, even science, cannot give them ultimate security. They begin to seek something higher, something unshakable. 3. The division of humanity, but not everyone will respond to the shaking in the same way. Prophecy reveals a clear division. Some will turn toward truth, while others will grow colder, harder, more selfish. In Matthew 24, Jesus said, "Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold." So we will see two groups emerge: the awakened those who seek light, unity, and spiritual renewal; the hardened those who cling to corruption, greed, and violence. This division is not only among nations, but within families, workplaces, and communities. The shaking reveals where the heart truly belongs. 4. A global call to repentance. The prophets spoke of repentance turning away from destructive paths. In the last days, the great shaking will function as a worldwide wake-up call. Wars will make people ask, why do we destroy each other? Earthquakes will make them ask, what really lasts? Economic collapses will ask, where is my foundation? The shaking is both a warning and an invitation. A warning that the old systems cannot last, and an invitation to build on something eternal. 5. The rise of false hope. But not all responses will be genuine. In times of desperation, false messiahs and deceivers rise, offering quick fixes and false promises. Some will come in the name of peace, but bring tyranny. Others will promise wealth, but deliver slavery. This too is part of prophecy. The rise of deception before the end. And so, the great shaking forces humanity into a choice. Will we turn to truth, or will we be deceived? 6. The hope beyond the shaking, for those who believe in prophecy. The shaking is not the end, it is the preparation for a new beginning. The scriptures describe a time when wars will cease, when justice will reign, and when creation itself will be restored. But before that dawn, the night must come. This is why the great shaking is not random. Chaos, it is purposeful. It strips away false securities so that people can discover the true foundation. And so, as we near the climax of this series, we must ask, if the world is shaking, where do you stand? If the systems collapse, what will hold you together? If tomorrow changes everything, will you be ready? The great shaking is not only about the end of an age, it is about the birth of a new one. As we reach the final part of this journey, let's step back and look at the bigger picture. The shaking of the earth, the roar of wars, the collapse of economies, and the rise of spiritual confusion, none of these are without meaning. The great shaking is both judgment and preparation. It is a warning, but also an invitation. And it leads us to the most important question of all. What comes after? 1. The pattern of renewal after chaos. History has shown us a pattern. Every great collapse has been followed by renewal. After the Roman Empire fell, a new Europe was born. After world wars, nations rebuilt with stronger institutions and alliances. After personal crises, many individuals have testified that they discovered their true strength, their true calling, in the ashes of their loss. Prophecy suggests the same on a cosmic scale, that the last days, as terrifying as they are not the finale of despair, but the doorway to a transformed world. The great shaking clears away what is corrupt, unstable, and temporary, so that something unshakable can take its place. 2. The unshakable kingdom. In the book of Hebrews, we read, "Once more I will shake not only the earth but also the heavens." The words "once more" indicate the removing of what can be shaken, that is, created things, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. This is the essence of prophecy. The shaking removes illusions and false securities, leaving only what is eternal. The wars may strip away our trust in armies. Earthquakes may strip away our trust in buildings, and economic collapses may strip away our trust in wealth. But beyond all of it stands the kingdom, a reality that cannot be moved. This is the dawn after the shaking, a time when people find themselves anchored not in possessions or politics, but in something higher, something divine. 3. The role of humanity in the last days. But prophecy is not just about waiting, it is about choosing. Humanity has a role in this story. We are not merely victims of disasters or pawns in wars. We are participants in the unfolding of history. Each of us must decide whether we will be part of the destruction or part of the renewal. In the face of earthquakes, will we turn on each other, or will we reach out and rebuild together? In the face of wars, will we seek vengeance, or will we pursue peace? In the face of spiritual confusion, will we follow lies, or will we seek the truth? The Great Shaking is not only about the systems of the world, it is about the soul of every person listening to this message. 4. The warning of complacency. Perhaps the greatest danger in times of shaking is not fear, but complacency. Some will hear the warnings, see the signs, and yet continue as if nothing is happening. Just as people in Noah's time kept eating, drinking, marrying, and ignoring the warnings until the flood came, so too will many in the last days. The shaking is meant to wake us up, but some will refuse to wake, preferring the comfort of illusions until it is too late. That is why prophecy is urgent. It calls us not just to hear, but to act. 5. The final confrontation prophecy also speaks of a final confrontation, a climax, where the forces of darkness and light will clash. Wars and rumors of wars are only the prelude. The rise of deception, false peace, and tyranny will challenge the faith of many. But just when it seems the darkness has triumphed, the dawn breaks. This is the hope beyond the shaking, that the end is not the end. That beyond the wars, the disasters, and the trials, there is a final victory, a restoration of justice, and the reign of truth. 6. The call to prepare. So what must we do as we await the dawn? The answer is simple, but not easy. Prepare, not only with food, water, or money, but with the strength of the Spirit. Because the greatest shaking will not be outside, but inside. And only those who are anchored in something unshakable will endure. Preparation means examining your heart. It means asking yourself, am I living for what lasts, or am I clinging to what will soon crumble? It means choosing truth over deception, love over hate, humility over pride. 7. The hope of the dawn, and so we end not with fear, but with hope. The dawn after the shaking is brighter than anything we can imagine. Imagine a world where nations no longer rise against nations. Imagine a world where earthquakes cease, where creation itself is restored, where peace is not just a dream but reality. This is the promise of prophecy, that the story does not end in destruction, but in renewal. That after the shaking comes the dawn. Final words. My friends, we are living in extraordinary times. The signs are around us. Earthquakes increasing, wars multiplying, societies trembling, and hearts growing restless. The Great Shaking is not a myth, not just ancient poetry. It is unfolding before our very eyes. But do not be afraid. Fear is not the response we are called to. Instead, let us be watchful. Let us be ready. Let us be awake. For though the shaking comes, so does the dawn. And when the dust settles, the question will not be whether the world was shaken, but whether you stood firm, whether you found your foundation in something unshakable. The Great Shaking is coming. Perhaps it is already here. But beyond the night, the morning will rise, and in that dawn, all will be made new.